In a lot of ways, we're actually more closed off than people were back in medieval times. Those folks didn't think twice about communal baths or being around others during intimate moments. Their lives were lived out in the open, raw, loud, and unfiltered. These days, we wouldn't dare crack a joke about pubic hair over a fancy dinner. But your grandmother? She probably had more adventure before finishing her morning chores than most of us get in an entire week. No exaggeration. While we're glued to our phones for the 10th time before lunch, she was out there dodging real danger, the kind that didn't come with a pause button. Her version of daily excitement would make your Netflix queue look like an ad for sleeping pills. Life in the Middle Ages wasn't just uncertain, it was thrilling. Every single day came with a genuine sense of, who knows what'll happen next? Would a storm flatten your crops? Would a pack of thieves hit the market? Would tonight's town festival turn into an all-out brawl? Nobody had the slightest clue. And somehow, that unpredictability made them feel vividly, unmistakably alive. Here's the wild part: without social media, streaming shows, or digital distractions, entertainment back then came from the real, messy drama happening right in front of you. There were sword tournaments where knights literally tried to knock each other out for fun. There were traveling performers tossing fire, telling stories that would make your ears blush. And the gossip? Oh, the market square gossip was spicier than any reality show. Mostly because it was about people you actually knew. Even ordinary workdays carried a jolt of adrenaline we've completely lost. Blacksmiths worked inches from molten metal and roaring fire. Bakers stayed up all night, racing the sunrise to get loaves ready before the town woke. Farmers wrestled with the weather, wild animals, and crops that might fail without warning. Every job back then demanded sweat, focus, and guts. Life wasn't predictable, but it sure wasn't dull. And here's the fascinating part. There's real science behind why that kind of life felt so satisfying. Psychologists say small doses of risk or uncertainty release dopamine, that same brain chemical that makes thrill seekers jump out of airplanes. Medieval folks didn't need to pay for skydiving or roller coasters. Their whole world was one big, natural adrenaline rush. What's strange is how we've done everything possible to eliminate that same spark from our lives. We've built safety nets, drawn up insurance plans, and created routines so predictable that we've practically erased surprise from existence. Then we sit around wondering why we feel so restless and numb. Those medieval people didn't need theme parks or escape rooms. Their entire world was one giant, high-stakes adventure. Every sunrise promised something real. Not another day of traffic jams, scrolling, and sitting under fluorescent lights. And yet, the rush of danger wasn't even the best part of medieval life. The real magic was how deeply satisfying their work was, something our modern jobs can barely touch. When you spent your day carving a chair, forging a horseshoe, or baking bread, you ended with something real in your hands. No vague reports, no endless spreadsheets. Just solid proof that your effort meant something. A medieval craftsman wasn't just a worker. He was an artist. Every blacksmith had a signature swing of the hammer. Every baker knew how their oven behaved on a damp morning. This wasn't factory monotony, it was personal mastery. And here's the kicker. People respected that kind of skill. Back then, you weren't just Kevin from accounting. You were Kevin the carpenter, the guy who built the church doors sturdy enough to outlast your grandkids' There was pride in that name, in that legacy. And funnily enough, modern research totally backs up why that kind of hands-on work felt so satisfying. Studies show that doing things like woodworking, gardening, or even knitting can cut symptoms of depression by nearly a third. There's something powerful, almost ancient, about making things with your own two hands. It taps into the part of our brains built for creation, not for sorting emails or sitting through back-to-back Zoom calls. But that's just one piece of the puzzle. Medieval workers naturally followed what psychologists now call task completion cycles. Start something, finish it, admire it, and move on to the next thing. Compare that to today, where projects drag on for months, get scrapped halfway through, or drown in corporate red tape. No wonder we feel disconnected. Those old craftsmen could literally point to something and say, "I made that." And that simple statement carried a weight we've lost. Another thing that made a huge difference was specialization. In a small village of maybe 200 people, You might have been the only person who knew how to tan leather properly or repair a broken wagon wheel. That made you valuable, indispensable, even. These days, you're one of millions doing a similar job, often competing with people halfway across the world, working from their kitchen tables in different time zones. It's no wonder modern work feels replaceable. And don't even get me started on the pace of things. Medieval craftsmen didn't run on quarterly reports or corporate calendars. Their lives followed the rhythm of the seasons, busy in harvest time, slower in winter. They worked when daylight allowed, rested when tired, and celebrated when a job was done. Nobody was checking messages during dinner because, well, messages didn't exist. What really sticks with me is how clear their goals were. Finish 10 horseshoes by Thursday. Deliver the wedding gown before Saturday's feast. Simple, achievable tasks that brought genuine satisfaction when completed. Not optimize engagement metrics by 7% while aligning cross-departmental deliverables. And the feedback? Instant. If a table wobbled, your customer let you know right away. If your bread was perfect, folks showed up early the next morning begging for more. No waiting half a year for a performance review to find out if you were doing a decent job. But it wasn't just their work that kept them fulfilled. Their play was a whole different level of wild. See, medieval people didn't need gym memberships or fitness apps. Their entire world doubled as a workout, and staying in shape wasn't a hobby, it was survival. Take archery, for example. Every village had contests where men showed off their aim, trying to hit targets from jaw-dropping distances. But it wasn't just sport. Those same skills meant putting food on the table and keeping enemies at bay. That's what I'd call functional fitness with real-life perks. Then there was mob football. And no, not angry fans storming a field. This was the chaotic ancestor of soccer. Imagine the entire village as the playing field, with barely any rules and a pig's bladder for a ball. Hundreds of people would chase it through streets, fields, and even rivers, all trying to get it to the opposite end of town. It was absolute bedlam. Loud, muddy, hilarious bedlam. And everyone loved it. Wrestling matches were just as popular. Men grappled in front of roaring crowds, sometimes winning a pig, sometimes just earning bragging rights and the admiration of onlookers. Even the losers walked away with a good story and sore muscles. No protein shakes required. And the nobles? They turned danger into a spectacle. Jousting tournaments were the medieval equivalent of extreme sports. Picture two armored knights charging at full speed, lances aimed, with a crowd losing its mind in the stands. The thrill of that moment would make modern bungee jumping look like a walk in the park. Even their simpler games had heart-pounding excitement. Skittles, the old version of bowling, wasn't just a casual toss. It was a real celebration when you knocked those pins down. And tug of war? Whole guilds would join in, pulling until their arms shook, all for the glory of victory and bragging rights that lasted all year. The beauty of it all was how natural it was. Physical activity wasn't scheduled, branded, or guilt-ridden. It was simply part of living. No memberships, no leg day, no excuses, just life in motion. Those medieval folks didn't just work themselves into shape. They played their way there. Every game they had was a mix of exercise, community, and pure joy. They didn't need screens or batteries to have fun. Their playground was the whole village and every field beyond it. When your downtime involves firing arrows, sprinting after a ball across open countryside, or wrestling your neighbors in front of cheering friends, depression doesn't exactly stand a chance. And speaking of neighbors, those people knew something we've nearly forgotten: how to truly connect with each other. Real, face-to-face, heart-to-heart connection. Their approach to love and relationships makes our modern dating world look like a bad dress rehearsal. Before dating apps turned romance into a swipe-and-scroll shopping trip, medieval folks practiced something we've lost completely: genuine courtship. When a guy liked a girl, he couldn't just like her picture and hope for the best. He had to show up in person with effort. Sometimes that meant poetry, handwritten and awkward, sure, but honest. Even if his rhymes were terrible, the gesture said more than any emoji ever could. And the process? It wasn't quick. Courtship could take months, sometimes years. Sounds like a marathon compared to today's instant DMs, but funny enough, it actually worked. Modern studies show that people who rely on dating apps tend to feel more anxious and lonely than those who meet their partners naturally. Makes you wonder who really had love figured out. Medieval romance was like slow-cooked stew, rich, patient, and layered, while our modern version is more like something zapped in the microwave. Quick, convenient, but kind of hollow. Take the troubadours, for example. These guys would stand outside a woman's window and sing their feelings, rain or shine. Sure, it sounds corny by today's standards, but come on. Wouldn't you rather get a love song under the moonlight than a "Hey, you up?" text at 2 a.m.? And the dances, oh man, the dances were something else. None of that awkward club grinding or pretending to text so you don't have to make eye contact. These were partner dances that actually required, partners. You had to look each other in the eye, move in sync, and feel the rhythm together. Revolutionary, apparently. Courtship gifts were meaningful, too. You might get a hand-carved comb, a pressed flower, or a ribbon embroidered with your initials. Compare that to today's recycled good morning messages sent out to a dozen people at once. Even the dowry system, weird as it might sound now, meant families were genuinely invested in making a relationship succeed. Everyone had skin in the game. If your marriage worked, it reflected well on the whole family. If it didn't, well, everyone felt it. But that also meant you weren't alone when things got rough. And during courtship, people actually talked. Real conversations, not small talk or carefully edited texts. They shared dreams, fears, and favorite saints. They debated whether barley bread beat wheat bread. They laughed, they teased, they learned each other's quirks. No filters, no angles, just two humans figuring each other out. Sure, arranged marriages were a thing, but even those often included a get-to-know-you period. Couples had a chance to grow into their affection. Love wasn't just a spark. It was something that developed through shared experiences, not matching selfies. They fell for real people, flaws, morning breath, bad hair days, and all. Authentic love, not curated personas. And their connection didn't stop with romance. Medieval folks were plugged into the real, physical world in ways that would blow our screen-tired minds. Think about your average Monday morning. Coffee machine buzzing, fluorescent lights flickering. Another day inside without so much as a breath of real air. Your medieval ancestors would have laughed at that strange kind of self-imposed torture. For them, every morning started with the sun rising over actual fields, painting everything in color. Not that cold, blue glow we get from our screens. They woke up to the sound of roosters, not alarms. Their lives moved with the rhythm of daylight and seasons, a natural pattern that, as modern science now tells us, actually kept their minds healthier and their moods more balanced. Here's the funny part. Medieval people didn't have to schedule nature time into their week or sign up for corporate wellness walks. They didn't need reminders to unplug. They lived it every single day. Farmers back then spent their days with dirt under their nails and sunlight on their backs, watching tiny seeds turn into the food that kept their families alive. If that's not real job satisfaction, I don't know what is. Even city folks had a touch of nature close by. Small gardens tucked behind stone walls, courtyards filled with herbs, or fields just a short walk away. Not a 2-hour commute through traffic. They'd pluck rosemary for supper, chase down a chicken when dinner required it, or simply sit beneath a night sky unspoiled by artificial light. This wasn't some weekend camping trip for Instagram. For them, that was just Tuesday. And here's the part that blows my mind. Modern research shows that spending time outdoors can lower cortisol levels. That stress hormone that makes you feel like your brain's going to burst during rush hour traffic, by 20 to 30%. Medieval people were getting that stress relief naturally, without even realizing it. Their entire year was designed around nature's rhythm. Spring brought fresh hope after long, hard winters. Summer offered warm evenings perfect for laughter, games, and music under the stars. Then came harvest, the season of pride, sweat, and celebration. And when winter returned, life slowed down. People gathered by firelight, telling stories, mending tools, and planning what came next. Now compare that to us, sealed off in climate-controlled boxes where seasons only mean swapping out Netflix shows. We traded muddy boots and real seasons for sanitized predictability, and somehow wonder why we feel so disconnected and restless. Those same medieval folks also practiced what modern scientists now call forest bathing. Back then, it didn't need a trendy name, they just called it taking a walk. They didn't need to monetize peace and quiet. They just lived it. Their days were guided by the natural world, watching sunrises, tracking the moon, reading weather patterns that could make or break a harvest. That steady connection kept their internal clocks aligned, unlike our caffeine-fueled, sleep-deprived lives. And here's something else they nailed that we've utterly forgotten: their relationship with stuff. Your average medieval ancestor owned maybe a dozen things. Their whole wardrobe could fit inside a small wooden chest. Meanwhile, the average modern household has something like 300,000 individual objects. That's 25,000 times more stuff than any medieval peasant could even imagine. And yet, somehow, those folks were happier with their handful of belongings than most of us are with closets overflowing with options. When you only own one good cloak, you take care of it. You mend it, you respect it, you know every stitch by heart. Compare that to the modern closet. Packed so full you can't remember half of what's in there. Some pieces still sporting price tags from impulse buys that meant everything for about 5 minutes. Medieval people valued quality because they had to. A blacksmith's hammer might last a lifetime. A table was built strong enough to outlive the family that ate around it. Everything served multiple purposes. That same table was for meals, repairs, and maybe even dancing on when the mood struck. Funny thing is, science now confirms what they knew instinctively. Harvard researchers found that people who prioritize experiences over possessions are generally happier. Medieval folks didn't need a study to tell them that. They lived by it every day. Their money went toward shared moments, a festival ticket, a feast with friends, a round of ale at the tavern. They didn't collect gadgets or knickknacks. They collected memories and relationships. And without endless aisles of products and ads, they were spared what we now call decision fatigue. Nobody stood in a shop for 20 minutes debating between 47 brands of soap. There was one kind, you bought it and it worked. Simple. But the real beauty was how deeply their possessions meant something. Every item told a story. That cooking pot, handed down from a grandmother. That belt, made by the village leatherworker who knew your family for decades. Objects weren't disposable. They were extensions of people's lives. Today, we live in the opposite world. More things, less meaning. We own mountains of stuff but treasure almost none of it. A medieval peasant likely cherished their one pair of good boots more than we cherish anything in our entire house. And it makes sense. The less you own, the more you actually live. They didn't waste weekends organizing closets or assembling furniture from confusing instruction sheets. They didn't drown in credit card debt from impulse buys meant to fill emotional gaps. All that time and energy we spend managing our stuff, they spend it on people. Talking, crafting, laughing, and living. When medieval folks finally got something new, say, a bright ribbon for a festival, the excitement didn't fade in an afternoon. It lingered for weeks, sometimes months. Scarcity made every little luxury feel like a small miracle. That mindset of less stuff, more living gave people space for what actually mattered: connection, purpose, and joy. And speaking of space, let's talk about how they treated time, because their approach to daily life might just be the missing key to real contentment. Time in the Middle Ages didn't rush, it flowed. Like honey, slow and steady. There were no clocks shouting from every wall. No phones buzzing every 30 seconds. No calendar notifications flashing red warnings about another meeting. People lived by something infinitely wiser and more peaceful: the sun. When the sky lightened, you woke up. When it darkened, you rested. Simple. Not lazy, not primitive, just beautifully human. Your great-great-great-grandmother didn't glance at her wrist every 5 minutes to see if she was late. She lived with what psychologists today call time affluence. The genuine sense that you have enough hours in the day to breathe, think, and exist. Imagine that. It's funny, medieval folks naturally practiced what modern mindfulness coaches now charge hundreds of dollars to teach. They were present because there was no alternative. No scrolling through social feeds while half listening to someone talk. No binge-watching shows in the background while multitasking. When they spoke to someone, they gave them their full attention. Eyes, ears, heart, and all. Now, let's put that in perspective. The average person today checks their phone 96 times a day. That's about once every 10 minutes. Your medieval ancestor? Zero notifications. Zero pings. They lived by rhythm, not rush. Their lives moved in natural waves. Busy, intense seasons followed by real downtime. Harvest was chaos in the best way. Long days, aching muscles, laughter around the fields. But once the work was done, winter arrived with quiet. Storytelling by firelight. Mending tools. Letting the mind wander. Compare that to us, where Tuesday feels the same as Thursday, and December melts straight into March. Our calendar's full, but our lives feel strangely empty. Medieval people thought about time differently, in what researchers now call kairos time, moments of meaning, as opposed to chronos time, the tick-tock tyranny we live by. For them, a single moment of genuine presence mattered more than an hour packed with productivity. When a medieval baker kneaded dough, he wasn't distracted by his to-do list. He felt the dough in his hands, smelled the yeast, watched the slow magic of bread rising. He wasn't mentally fast-forwarding to an afternoon meeting or worrying about tomorrow's presentation, because those things didn't exist. Even their sleep rhythms were perfectly in tune with nature. No blue light tricking their brains into thinking it was noon at midnight. When the world got dark, their bodies followed. Melatonin rose naturally and sleep came deep and restorative. No sleep apps, no melatonin gummies required. And yes, they had worries, real ones. Failed crops, illness, bandits on the road. But their anxiety was rooted in reality, not in endless digital noise or imagined future disasters. What medieval people didn't suffer from was what psychologists now call time anxiety, that creeping, modern feeling that you're always behind, always racing the clock. Their world didn't move that way. There was beauty in anticipation. Back then, people looked forward to things because they didn't happen every day or every click. A harvest festival wasn't just another weekend event. It was the grand payoff after months of backbreaking work. The wait, the build-up, the effort, that's what made it magical. Their slower rhythm left room for wonder, reflection, and real human connection. Makes you think twice about downloading that next productivity app, doesn't it? And speaking of connection, when the day's work was done and darkness fell across the villages, something almost sacred happened. The world didn't quiet down. It came alive. The real party was just beginning. Forget your quiet evenings spent half watching Netflix. Medieval nightlife was loud, unpredictable, and gloriously messy. Taverns were the social heart of every town, packed shoulder to shoulder with farmers, blacksmiths, and travelers ready to shake off the weight of the day. These weren't sterile bars with flat screens and playlists curated by algorithms. Picture instead low ceilings lit by flickering candles, the air thick with laughter, smoke, and the sweet bitterness of ale. It was chaos in the best possible way. Games of dice and cards filled every corner. Men bet everything from coins to livestock, and losing your cow in a game of chance? That wasn't scandalous, that was Tuesday. The stakes were real, and that made every roll pulse with adrenaline. Then came the music, oh, the music. Traveling minstrels would roll into town like medieval rock stars. Lutes slung over their shoulders, beating drums, and singing songs so scandalous they'd make your grandmother faint. These weren't polite ballads. They were rowdy, hilarious, and often merciless. Roasting local officials, mocking forbidden romances, and telling jokes that would never make it past a PG rating. And the dancing? Forget choreography. Entire taverns would erupt into spontaneous folk dances. Arms linked, feet stomping, people spinning in dizzy circles, occasionally crashing into tables or each other. It was less graceful waltz and more joyful mosh pit, complete with tunics and flying tankards instead of glow sticks. And then there were the festivals, oh man, the festivals. Medieval communities knew how to celebrate life like it truly mattered. Bonfires so big they lit up neighboring towns. Masks that turned everyday farmers into mysterious strangers, and dancing that went on until the first light of dawn. These weren't filtered, curated moments for social media. They were full-body experiences, loud, sweaty, ridiculous, and unforgettable. Jesters and storytellers would compete for attention, trying to outdo each other with wild jokes and dramatic tales. The humor was bold and physical. A pie in the face, a pratfall in the mud, slapstick in its purest, funniest form. But the real magic of these nights wasn't just in the laughter or the ale. It was in the togetherness. Everyone joined in. Nobody sat on the sidelines pretending to be too cool or too tired. There were no phones to hide behind, no screens to watch other people living. You were in it, dancing, shouting, laughing until your sides hurt. Sure, people probably woke up with pounding headaches and more than a few embarrassing stories to explain, but they'd earned those hangovers. They lived those nights completely raw, unfiltered, alive. Today's nightlife, with its polished lighting and curated playlists, often feels like a performance we're all half-watching. Medieval merrymaking? That was the real deal, messy, human, and honest. Proof that sometimes the best kind of entertainment doesn't need electricity, algorithms, or even much planning. Just good company, a little courage, and absolutely no inhibitions.